Welcome back to the Practical Shaman Podcast. And today I have a very special guest and a dear friend, Anne Lothian. From the first miracle of dramatically and instantly changing the weather at age 9, Anne Lothian was smitten with the idea that magic could be an everyday part of ordinary reality. For years, she has investigated the mystical and paranormal phenomenon, including stints as a remote viewer, professional clairvoyant, psychic treasure hunter, and more. Her 2011 overnight spiritual awakening opened her up to what she calls the deep magic of being, and she now teaches others how to harness this magic in their own lives in her online courses such as the 40-Day Magic Challenge, the Deep Giving Experiment, Money Magic Lab, and coming this fall, Soul Unleashed. You can find her on YouTube or Facebook, or her website, theawakeneddreamer.com. Well, hello, Lori, Miss Magical Lady. Hey, because we're going into the realm of magic, I was just told that I had to blow the wind whistle before we got into this conversation, and that's not always the case. So who knows what magical tools are going to unfold for us today. So hold on to your hats because the wind is going to start to blow. And as we step out of time here today, we're going to learn about some magical trips. We're going to take it. I think we're taking a trip today because, we've been talking about this, that the timeline is shifting, and you might be booted from one timeline to the next this weekend. Before you just get into this magical thing, have you noticed lately that a lot of people have been having these confrontation with death experiences? Have you had that in your world too?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, funny you should say magical tricks and magical tips and whatever, and tricks and trips. Because I just think I took a trip when you did the wind whistle. Like, where did I go?
I don't know. Where did you go?
It was very beautiful. But yeah, you mean confrontations with death, as in lately a lot of people are experiencing death of people they know and love and animals and all of that. Is that what you're suggesting? Because I see that a lot right now.
Yeah, and one of my friends the other day, he almost got into a head-on collision, and he had a split second to decide whether he wanted to go or not.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. In that sense, I totally get what you're talking about. And sudden departures of people or sudden near departures. I really, without getting really dramatic, because I'm going to teach some fun stuff today, it does seem to me that there's a lot of transition happening, and it's not a bad thing. To me, it's like maybe a spirit or a soul says to themselves, I can do a better job on the other side. You know what I mean? Like I'll be more help over there than I can be on this side of this very intense time on planet Earth. It is an intense time for all of us.
Sami just woke up and sat up because, this podcast is cat approved, and I sit here in my podcasting studio, and Sami sits right at the helm of this whole thing. And so when you talked about that, her ears perked up, she got up and she sat up because she wants to hear what you have to say.
Oh, what a beautiful thing. I love your cat. Okay. The cat woman. Yeah. So anyway, Renee, since you know me, I'm all about magic, and it sounds funny to talk about magic. I remember 4 or 5 years ago when I started sort of going online a bit to teach online magic classes. I remember feeling actually like I was strange. And just shortly after that, Elizabeth Gilbert comes out with a book called Big Magic. And at the time, I had a little manuscript I was working on called The Little Book of Big Magic, which I ditched after that. But the point being that more and more I'm seeing in the collective field, it started with the Harry Potter, right? The Harry Potter mythos and the Muggles versus the magical people. But I'm seeing more and more people now starting to use the word magic liberally, not like woo-woo magic, or not thinking it magic as, for the super strangely new age, or even that magic is just restricted to the hat and the rabbit and the illusion, but rather using magic in the way I use magic, which is the magic of our true being. Like, I call it deep magic, because that level of magic is nothing less than the perfect synchronized flow of our lives as we step into the power and the beauty of who and what we really are, which are divine beings here on earth. And that kind of magic is mind-blowing. And I teach that kind of magic by teaching people methods to access it.
You just want to, just a disclaimer here. When you're in the flow of magic, it doesn't mean like your computer's not going to take a dive into the toilet or the bathtub or all of that. So I think let's get people so they don't get thinking like, magic is something that's just all of a sudden going to make their lives flow. I mean, not flow, but flow, the way they think that it should flow.
Well, you can have flow in the middle of hardship. You can have serendipity and synchronistic overload. I call it hyper synchronicity in the middle of extremely challenging times, as well as times that are full of the things that we would like. So there's the sweet and sour of life. There will always be the sweet and sour of life. We're in a duality, we're in a polarity, and we're bound by that law of rhythm. So you're always going to find for every up, there will be a down. What magic is about the qualitative way you navigate the ups and downs, or the sweet and sour of life as it unfolds. So see, life gives us happy and unhappy because we don't like the circumstance or we like the circumstance, right? But magic gives us a deeper sense of abiding joy. It gives us a place from, even when we're unhappy, even when we're grief-stricken, even when we're sad, we still have this underlying peace, underlying sense of abiding joy, like there's a joyfulness underneath everything else. And you can still find the sweet spots within the darkness or in the sour. So, I'll give you an example of that to make it really more concrete. When my mom died, I was 39 years old, and I was shocked. She was hit by a car. I kind of bring this up in a lot of stories because it was a turning point in life, but it was one of the most truly magical times of my life because it blew me so wide open. And so I was so just shattered in a good way that I began to experience more magic than I ever have. And the beginning of that magic, as in synchronicity, flow, telepathy, strange events that were really just beautiful and made my heart open. But one of the ones that makes me laugh the most was looking for my mother's will. And I laugh at it now because it was so sweet. We're looking for my mom's will, my sisters and I, just maybe 2 days after she was hit by the car. We were back at her house trying to find it. And, it was a long, like an hour long search, and we looked everywhere, couldn't locate it at all. And so I said to my sisters, well, let's just ask my mom, which is magical because whether my mom was there or not, I invoked this idea. There was a non-ordinary way to find the will. So let's just ask mom to give us hot, hot, cold, cold, which is that old Easter egg hunt, She used to do when we were kids, like to help us find the Easter eggs hidden around the house. And so one of my sisters, about 10 minutes after I said, let's ask for the hot, hot, cold, cold, one of my sisters was looking in my dad's upstairs bedroom. He had already passed, but his stuff was still there. And she said, oh my God, she came running down to the dining room. She said, the heater in our dad's bedroom is going on. The baseboard electrical heater was blaring heat, but the thermostat was turned completely off. It was also very cold. It was October, so that was a cold room before the heat came on. And lo and behold, of course, I did find the will in that room, in a place in the room none of us had really looked, because I guess we weren't looking that hard in my dad's, old bedroom. No one thought she'd stick it in there. She had a strange hiding spot for it. So and that just began a cascade of incredible synchronicity and serendipity in my life that had already been there, but just accelerated. So I began to observe that all the times of my life, whether they were the most difficult, like the middle of a divorce or a breakup, loss of a loved one, or the most joyful, like celebrating an accomplishment, celebrating a new relationship, that magic was always still a baseline. That was always available. And can I say something about that? Because your point was so well taken. It doesn't mean you have a life without problems, but it does mean that you have a bigger sense of like Gabby Bernstein's book is called The Universe Has Your Back, I think. But it basically feels like that. When you're operating with magic as your operating system, you always feel like the universe has your back. You just feel like you've got like the backup crew, like things are aligning in all ways, in all times, to support your awakening and your growth. And you feel that, you feel taken care of when the magic is engaged, when you're dialoguing with your soul. And that's the last thing I want to say. Magic is nothing less than having an open dialogue with your soul.
That's great. So give us a trick on the hot, cold, or something that you said you had some magical cues or clues or
because I'm so,
games for us. I think games.
I got the ADD brain, so I wrote them down for you guys. So I just finished
And she
teaching.
highlighted them.
Yeah, I just finished teaching a course called the 40-Day Magic Challenge, and I taught it 2 years ago online, or 3 years ago maybe, and I did it again just recently. And what I want to say about this, because I'm going to give you three of about 7 tools I teach in that course, and they're just easy to learn. I can explain them right now, and you guys can walk away and use them tomorrow, and then have an extraordinarily different experience of your life if you're willing to try them. Each one of them is simple, but each one is effective. But before I tell you what they are, I want to say something that ties in with what you said about the energy of the planet lately, when you said people are having these kind of confrontations with death. I'm also experiencing a very dramatic difference between the way people are picking up these tools and using them now, as opposed to the same class I ran 2 or 3 years ago online. There's like an acceleration going on of some sort. People could just like, oh, I would have to do a lot more hand-holding 2 or 3 years ago, a lot more explaining, a lot more cajoling, a lot more coaching, a lot more helping. This time, I would just hand the tool out in the assignment and people would be running with it. We had 150 people in this class. So on the Facebook group, we had 75 or so actively engaged folks. And then the reporting of what was happening for them, and the way they were able to like go from like 0 to 100, like thinking they were a muggle to becoming like the top wizard at Hogwarts so darn quickly, makes me think something's happening on the planet that's accelerating everybody's capacity to remember that they have this magical essence, and that little bit like Neo in the Matrix, once you learn a few of the tricks, you can begin to manipulate in a good way reality. Okay, so here's the 3 tools. Okay, the first one is called this is one of my favorites for me lately. It's what I'm playing with the most. So it's called a claidon, Cledon. I didn't make that word up. That exists in ancient Greece and antiquity, times of old. And a claidon is using overheard conversations, snippets of people, sound bites of people's conversations as a guidance system for yourself, as a way to incite and invite synchronistic information. So I'll give you an example. Well, first of all, just so you know, in times of antiquity, prophets and seers used this technique purposefully. They would go sit in a very busy marketplace, and they would have a question at hand. Like, I'm going to make up a question, like, should we go to war with Sparta? Say they were going to look for that answer to help maybe advise the governor or the king or something. So they're sitting in the market, and they're activating with that question. And so anybody who walks past them and they can hear a bit of the conversation, they're going to take that as they're going to start to compile clues to that answer. So that was a very purposeful way. Maybe someone goes by and says, Sparta sucks. And the next person goes by and goes, damn, we got to get to war with Sparta soon. Or, you know what I mean? Like really straight shit like that. So then in our own lives, none of us have time to necessarily go sit in a marketplace just waiting, but we're always standing in line at Starbucks or something like it, We're always waiting somewhere at a grocery store. We're usually, even in our, I'm just trying to think where other places where I'm in public and I overhear conversations, Starbucks, grocery store lineups,
radio. Sometimes you hear, do you use the radio for that too, or is that a different tool?
That's going to be a different tool. I love it. I love when you so get ahead of me like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's perfect. So I'll use that one next. So the claidon, the beauty of the claidon is this. It's usually you're going to overhear a snippet of somebody's conversation to an active question that you're looking for an answer to, like you're pondering it. So one of mine most recently was I had a question about moving to Montreal from Vancouver, and I was actively engaging that tool to see, is this a good thing for me to do now? That was in September. And I was at a Starbucks, one of my favorites. Well, any coffee shop, but I happened to be at Starbucks waiting for my coffee. And I overheard a woman in the coffee shop talking with a girlfriend at a table. They were sitting down, and she was saying to her friend, I was gonna move, but I think I'm gonna wait and move next year. And I don't know where she was going to move to, but the point was I got it. Okay, wait and move next year. And then I had a couple other synchronicities to these other tools that confirmed that. So I'm going to move, but not until next year. So using that tool, It's weird. Oh yeah, like even at the gas station filling up your car, you may hear the guy at the pump next talking on his cell. You're gonna find it really fun. And the weird part about it is that often their conversations, of course, have really nothing to do with your topic. It could be like one phrase from their conversation, one word that just jumps out, and it's meaningful for your question at hand. So, and you'll notice, by the way, in each of these examples, I'm going to give you the three, that I'm asking for each of us to have a question. Like, it's not like synchronicity is merely for entertainment and being by the campfire with our wowzer stories of serendipity. It is actually a tool that can be harnessed with these techniques I'm giving you in order to be guided, in order to have clarity and insight about what is the next right action in your life. So the question matters, right? Overhearing people's conversations without a framework, without a question that from which you're filtering the information, makes no sense. So there. The second one is called the Magic Music Shuffle. Thank you for introducing it early.
That was magical. I must have heard it early.
Yes, you did. So the Magic Music Shuffle, I call it the shuffle because it's best used, it's most easily used on your computer with your iTunes library, music library, or Spotify or Pandora or any of the music apps you may be able to use on your laptop, or like I have Spotify on my phone, right? And what this technique is good for is using music, like the song, a lyric in the song, or sometimes the name of the album, depending on what you're using. If you have the app for Spotify, it gives you all of those. Same with Pandora. And you can create like very big playlists, or you can just randomly shuffle somebody else's playlist. It doesn't matter. But you have a question at hand. I have a 400 song playlist that I use for my questions. And I find that the answers I get, I usually take songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, because I find that the lyrics are far more profound than, say, rap music or some of the music I don't like, or the contemporary music.
Your mama. It's like,
yeah.
I already found the will.
So I like the old school stuff, but you can use what you want. But the point is that my playlist has a lot of the old songs and the Beatles and stuff, the 60s. Anyway, and I find that the music can be mind-bending. And I'm going to tell you just an example. It's so profound. There's so many examples, but it goes back to the last question I was asking in September, where I'm still trying to decide if I should move sooner than later. And I used the shuffle on my Spotify app, and I got the song. So the question I asked is, should I move to Montreal this fall? And I did the shuffle, and the shuffle part of the app. And the first song that shows up on my screen is a song called Traveling Without Moving. I mean, seriously, I don't even know that band. I don't even know how it got on my playlist. I don't even, what the hell? The band is, I don't remember the name of the band. I screenshot the answer, though. It's in my files. I have to do a screenshot to prove to myself this really happened. But Traveling Without Moving, and then the claydon of hearing the conversation in the coffee shop, which was the same day, was such clear guidance for me. So that's just profound for me. So using your shuffle technique, but that leads me to what you just said about the radio. When you're driving your car, you're not in charge of the DJ's playlist. I mean, the DJ has a playlist at hand, and you have multiple radio stations to choose from. But I often find that a great way to do it is to get in my car and then either hit the scan button so that the first radio station/song I hear is an answer to a question. So it's got other stations to choose from. Or I pick a radio station with a lot of songs and not too many commercial breaks. And I say, okay, on the fifth or sixth song, this will be an answer to the question at hand, whatever I'm percolating. And again, I'm very seldom am I not rewarded with the right song on the radio to back up that question. So the car radio can be a really great tool. It's a divination tool, right? Your car radio is a guidance and divination tool.
I love that. You also, now I'm going to pipe in, you also use your bag of wind gods and goddesses.
Oh my God, yes, they're in my other bed. They're in my living room right now. Yeah, so what I love with Renee's wind, I call it the bag of wind, but anyway, wind bag.
It is a bag of wind.
It is a wind bag.
I decided, you know what, I'm a wind bag, it's a wind bag, it's a bag of wind and stack of wind.
Yeah,
tried all these nice names, they just didn't work.
Yeah, so when Renee was actually when you were doing the book, when you were still creating all the winds and stuff, I actually had the beta test pile. And so I carried around in a little bag all these little strips that I'd cut out of my printer paper for like 2 or 3 years. And they went on trips with me. They were often wedged in my side of my car. They're still in my car, actually, the original bag. And, anytime I had a question, I would just grab a wind and the wind would give me the guidance, which is a lot of fun too. But that's a great technique, is having a handy oracle deck, of course. That's one of my oldest ones, is using any kind of oracle cards or decks or angel cards to like grab a quick answer to a question. But I don't tend to trust those without backup. So if I was to draw a card from an oracle of some sort, that gave me what I thought was clear guidance, I usually want to back it up for me with the claydon, or let's say with the magic music shuffle. Like, I like to have 2 or 3 backup messages coming through for me to be really certain that I'm hearing that soul voice, that the dialogue I'm having a clear signal to noise ratio, that the signal's strong. So that's why I introduce many techniques and use them all, for a question that I have. The last one that I like a lot, and I do this one a lot because I walk in the woods a lot, I call it a wonder walk. But I first learned this technique when I was in Scotland in 2000 and might have been 8, and I was with a Celtic shaman, and she was teaching women and men, there was guys on the trip, to take a long walk through this bog along the shore just outside of Edinburgh, and that we would have a question in mind, and then we would look for what appeared to us in nature, whether a bird swooped by us, or we happened to walk by a starfish, which I did in a little tidal pond, and I remember I was pondering the question of whether or not I should break up the current relationship I was in with the man who was on the trip with me, to engage in a new relationship, which is the man I eventually married and had 7 years with, currently my ex-husband and really good friend. And it was so interesting because that walk with that question, you could say selective attention, that I always wanted to, I really wanted to leave the relationship. So I kept looking for signs that would go in line with that. But I was profoundly confused and extraordinarily resisting leaving that relationship. So it was quite the opposite. I was having all these signs and symbols in nature of going separate ways. I think, like for example, where 2 birds were flying together, but then they parted ways, and they went in 2 directions. And actually I do remember that, because they weren't the same species. Like, sometimes you ever see how a smaller bird will piggyback another one, like with a seagull with a sparrow or something, or whatever it was, because we were on the ocean front. So they were seabirds, but they weren't the same species. And then they parted. And I'm like, oh, damn it, I do have to break up. It wasn't the thing I wanted to do. I hate breaking up. It's hard to do. So your wonder walk is to go for a walk in your neighborhood, or in the forest, or along the beach, or in nature. Doesn't matter where. It could be in the city. It doesn't have to be in nature. And to allow what your attention gravitates to and what is presented to you to be creating a narrative of information that gives you clarity. And again, because this is probably the most interpretive and subjective of these techniques, like, it's not subjective if a song shuffle is traveling without moving. That's pretty non-subjective. Objectively, I can take that message and share it with anybody and they understand what it meant. But when you're doing the wonder walk technique, it's way more interpretive and subjective. So you'll, see a tree that looks like it's pregnant, and you'll go, oh, so then, maybe I should have that baby. But someone else could look at that tree and go, the trunk, and go, it doesn't look pregnant to me. Right. So I guess the thing is that I say with the wonder walk, because it's one of the most magical, and it creates usually more of a narrative. Like, you'll see 2 or 3 things on the walk that tell you what direction to go in. But I always say to myself, well, that was great. Let me back it up with I have other tools, but these claydon and the magic music shuffle are my favorites.
That's great. And in Winds of Spirit, I have the wind walk, which is kind of like the wonder walk. The thing is that you invite the wind in to walk with you by going out and connecting through your breath, and asking your question, and then waiting for the wind to give you a sign that you're ready to start that walk. And so you could combine those 2 things, and I sometimes even hear the wind telling me things, and inputting information.
And to me, for the wind as well, I like the idea of, the wind can be blowing from the east, northwest, or south too, and just to go for that walk and feel which direction is the wind coming from, because right. Each of those, as you say in your book, each of those cardinal points informs the it's like a variation on the theme of each wind, right? So it has its own right. meaning. So yeah, no, you can definitely use it as a wind walk and wind walk with a wonder walk.
And for somebody who's more familiar with Lori's work listening, so if the wind is coming from the east, that's about your mind, and the south is about your emotions, and the west is about your physical harvesting and endings, and the north is about the spiritual. And actually, I was with a podcaster, Michael, with Inspired Nation, and he was so excited after reading the book and getting his wind whistle that he sent his partner off to Colorado with just these tools to find their new home. And he told me I could tell everyone this story because she, again, with that inspiring nature thing, she had the wind whistle, she was watching those signs from the wind, and then this group of bison show up. And it was like this whole experience of like, actually using these things to make big decisions, magic, little decisions. And I always say start with the little decisions. Like, start with your magic, maybe to find your parking spot. And then, then grow it out like, okay, now we're going from the mall to my new home.
Yes, and that's because it's a relationship with your divine essence, and it requires building trust. So the winds are an aspect of the divinity of which we are all a part, even as they have their own identity, just as nature has its own identity. We're developing that soulful relationship with the divine in everything, and it requires a relationship building process. And which is why, when you start out, yes, don't go for the big questions right away. Go for the smaller ones and build your trust quotient up, so that now when you get the big answers, you're willing to take the risk and listen. And I have to say, it's been a life of listening to that guidance for me, and so my trust quotient is really high. But when you first start out, yeah, you're so right, Renee. Start small, build it up.
Right. And then you start. A long time ago when I didn't trust it that much, I used to say, oh, I predicted that. And my friend said, why don't you start putting these predictions on white cards and, and start seeing them. And a couple of years, yesterday, I was on Facebook, and this woman that I was connected to, I was talking to her a couple of years ago, and she was talking about her niece, okay? This new niece. I said, oh, you're thinking about having oh, no, we're got to get married. We're going to, we're not ready for that. And then I go on Facebook yesterday, and it's been like a year and a half, whatever. And sure enough, she'd just given birth. And it was like,
Yeah, it's good to keep a tabulation and a record of all of the things that you're getting guidance on and all the information you get, because you will be surprised at how you can go check.
And that happens. We could talk all day because, we have lots of magic to talk about and lots of magic between us. But let's tell people where they can find you when they're looking for more of this magical, whimsical Lori.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, if you're really far out there, you're willing to take take the red pill in the matrix and go down the rabbit hole with me, go to YouTube. But if you're not too sure about really going down a rabbit hole, so it's just me and Lori, just go Lori Ann Lothian YouTube, you'll find my channel. But that's where I go really into my most my own cutting edge of the stuff I'm into. And it's not everybody's cup of tea. Just want to warn you guys. Now, if you really, really just want to get to know me and keep abreast of what I'm up to, I have my Facebook, account. And I have 5,000 friends, so you can only really follow me. But that means if you follow me, then when I announce things like I'm teaching a course, and you can also private message me there. I've been on Facebook since 2008, so I really learned that platform, and I just like the vibration there, because as much as I don't like Facebook sometimes, I like that I can create community there, and I have Facebook groups for my classes and stuff. So Facebook's if you have Facebook, it's a really great option. And then my website blog is awakenedreamer.com, theawakenedreamer.com, and you'll find me over there posting articles and announcing what I'm up to. And it's also where if you want a private session with me or reading, there's a tab there to get a private session. I actually have a sale on now, but I have sales all the time. But here's something else I want to say. I really want to say something about this. One of the reasons that I'm teaching people these tools is because I did readings for people for a decade in my 30s. I was a clairvoyant full-time, professionally. And I began to realize I was becoming somebody else's guidance system. And I wanted people to find their own inner guidance system. I didn't want to be the one to tell them what to do and, answer, should I take that job? What about this marriage? Because even though I was often correct, like about the future or the directions things were headed for them, I didn't want to be the source of that. I didn't want their dependency, and I didn't want to be that person for other people. So when I do sessions with people now, it's a lot more, it still has the future orientation and seeing the future, which I do, but it has a lot more getting into guidance and getting into clarity about what that person's own next move should be for their own enhancement of their own magic guidance system. So I'm more of a little bit more coachy than I used to be, and than I am just let me dish the future out. Yeah, so that's that.
That's great. And the Practical Shaman podcast comes to you every single Wednesday. Make sure you join us here and subscribe on. You can either subscribe at YouTube at Enlightening Arts, or on download the app on iTunes, and make us one of your favorites and share it with your friends. And please, 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 my goal is to sell 10,000 books this year, and I need your help to do that. It's a wonderful oracle. You open it up, you get some daily wind guidance, and there's some more magical tools, and that's what we're all about. So
wait, tell them to order your wind whistle, and the cards are so amazing.
Here's the wind whistle. These are being handmade by a man in Mexico who only speaks Spanish, although he's studying anthropology at school, and so I sent him the book, which is right now currently being translated into Spanish, but I sent him the English version, and he wrote me back the other day, and he said, wow, because he didn't know. I mean, I just said, I want these wind whistles, and this is what they need to look like, and I want this. And he goes, I love, being anthropologist, I love that you've gone into 32 cultures.
Oh,
I just was like, wow, and so I'm looking forward to meeting the translator and him, and when I go do a tour in Spanish. But
yeah. The wind whistle is pure magic. Just at the beginning, we transport it into another a dimension, I'm sure.
Wherever this conversation needed to go, it will go. And I'm sure Lori will join me more in the future. And thank you. Have a magical, wonderful day.
Thanks, Renee.